Hi again, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe in this health crisis. If you're watching this in the future, in the very far future, then you'll know we're currently going through a health crisis in our nation with a virus, COVID-19. And I wanted to make this video because I know a lot of people are at home. I'm at home. Everyone should be at home. And I've been watching a lot of YouTube, so I thought that you might too. So I wanted to do my very first kind of story time video and share with you my birth story, or I should say our son Luca's birth story. So grab a snack, grab a tea, coffee, whatever your preferred drink is, and let's talk, and I'll share with you the story of how Luca was born. It has been a little while if you haven't seen my last video, but our son Luca is 5 months old and he was born October 18th. And he had a kind of dramatic birth story. I honestly didn't think that anything would go like this, but if you're pregnant, be prepared because things don't always go as you hope. So let's go back to, October 12th, because October 12th was a Sunday, and that is when I had my baby shower. And my friend Aminta and Mary threw my baby shower for me, and I had already had a baby shower back in the Midwest with my friends and family back there, but I was having my Miami baby shower, and it was so much fun. I was feeling good. My feet at this point were kind of swollen, but that is, well, not kind of, they were really swollen. That's really the only discomfort I had been experiencing around this time. I had such a great time at my baby shower, and I was feeling really good, and obviously I got some things at the baby shower that I needed for the baby, so I was feeling extra prepared. And we actually had done our photo shoot, a maternity photo shoot, the day before, and maybe this is where I cursed myself, but we went and did the photo shoot, and then afterwards I sighed relief, and I told Cesar okay, I feel ready now. I don't know why having a maternity photo shoot, it's just something I wanted to do, and so I felt great, he can come. I feel great, I feel prepared, and I was saying that, but I didn't really mean it. I meant kind of great, hypothetically, he could come. But I didn't have my hospital bag prepared. I had a list, a Google Doc. If you guys know me at all, I am a huge planner, and I have a bunch of Google Docs for various things. So I had a Google Doc of everything that I wanted to take to the hospital for my whole birth experience. So I had everything planned of what I wanted to take. I even had a little newborn outfit, hospital outfit for him. So I had everything planned, but I hadn't packed it together. So Monday I go to work, and I'm feeling okay. And at this point, I'm just kind of uncomfortable. It's pretty hot. I mean, it's always hot in Miami, but October, even in Miami, is still pretty hot. It was hot. I did my thing. Then I woke up on Tuesday, and I just felt weird. I told Cesar that. I was I just feel weird. I don't know what it is. I feel kind of dizzy and kind of nauseous, and my feet were really swollen. I just felt uncomfortable and just really weird. I also was getting kind of a headache, and I just couldn't explain. I just didn't feel well. So I called in sick to work and said I was not coming. And that day I also had the first meeting appointment with our pediatrician. You go, in case you don't know this, because I didn't know this, is you pick a pediatrician, and then you have a consultation with them when you're still pregnant, and you tell them this is how far along I am, and they kind of work out, you talk to them and make sure it's a good fit. So I went to that appointment at 1 p.m. and it was actually right by where I work, and she was asking me are you okay? Because, do you feel okay? Because I must have, obviously, I did not seem like I felt okay. And I said, no, I'm kind of feeling dizzy and this and that. And oddly enough, I guess there was an OBG, triage center on another floor in that building. So I finished my appointment with the pediatrician, and I love her. We decided, I knew in that moment that she would be our pediatrician, and I was due on November 12th. So she said, okay, so let's say you give birth on November 12th, and she told me, you're a first-time mom, so you're probably gonna go over your due date. So just let me know, when you do give birth, as soon as the baby comes, so then I'll see you 24 hours, I'll see the baby right after that. So I was not planning to see her until November 12th or November, I think 14th or something. And she's that's perfect, because I'm going on vacation, so I won't be back until November 4th anyway. I'm okay, great. So I leave, and she tells me to go down to the OB-G triage center just to get checked out, just to be safe. So I go down there, and it's more of like a nurse kind of station, and they take my temperature, my blood pressure, and blood sugar. And I had a really low blood pressure, so I thought, okay, that's why I'm feeling this way, which I normally have low blood pressure. But since I was pregnant, my blood pressure like normalized. Some women actually experience hypertension. They have high blood pressure while they're pregnant, but mine just kind of like was finally in a normal range. So they said, you know, if you want, call your OB-G tomorrow and check in with them. And I was like, oh, okay. I kind of took the like low blood pressure thing as like, oh, that's why I'm feeling weird, you know? And they said you could like eat some nuts or something, like something salty to kind of like raise your blood pressure. So I went home and I talked to Cesar, and I was like, oh, you know, she's great. Let's choose her as a pediatrician. And then I was still feeling kind of weird, but I had it planned with my friend Aminta, who's also an amazing photographer and artist, to do milk bath maternity photos that night. So she was going to come over to my house, and we were going to do like milk bath photos in my bathtub, which I'll insert one of them here. They're a little bit like, you know, if you have sensitive eyes, they're like not, I'm naked, but you don't tell I'm naked, but just, you know, just know. They turned out really amazing given my bathtub situation. And so she asked me if I wanted to reschedule, and I was like, no, let's do it. I want to get it done. So she came over, and I don't know, I felt a lot better in the evening. So we did these photos. I feel like they turned out great. And so I went to work on Wednesday, and I felt like fine, you know, pretty fine. And on Thursday, we had our 36-week ultrasound appointment, which is where you kind of find out how big of a baby you have in there, because you don't, well, at least I'm not sure how it is in every country, but I think here it's typical that you have a 20-week appointment, and then they don't see you again until 36 weeks for an ultrasound, which I personally think that's like too far, in my opinion. I think if there's something they feel is off, they might do another one, but I don't know. I would really like to see the baby between 20 and 36 weeks. But that's besides the point. So we go in early in the morning, like 7 a.m., because I really didn't want to miss work. So I always took the most early appointment I could get. So 7 a.m. we went in there with Cesar, and they looked at the baby, and everything looked good. And they said that it looked like I was about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So I was 36 weeks, but the baby was measuring at around 38 weeks. And he was 7 pounds. And I tell you, this is word for word how the conversation between me and the ultrasound doctor, because there's a tech and then there's a doctor who like reads the results and tells you. I said to him, do you think I'm going to go into labor early? And he said to me, if I knew the answer to that, I would buy a lottery ticket and, you know, play the lottery. And I wanted to call him later that evening and be like, you should buy a lottery ticket, because foreshadowing, I went into labor later that day. In fact, we left that appointment, walked downstairs, and again, like the building was by where I work. So Cesar walks me to my building, and he says, oh, let me have the keys to your car. I'm going to go get your car washed. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. So he goes and gets my car washed, and I go upstairs, and I went to get like a banana bread at Starbucks, and I think I got like a small coffee. No, I got a one-shot latte, because that's, I remember specifically telling them just put one shot in there. So Cesar tells me, you know, come downstairs, and I have your keys, I got your car washed. And I was like, oh, okay. So I came downstairs, and you know, he was off that day. No, he was working later that day. And I was like, oh, do you want to walk with me to Jimmy John's? Because I was anemic towards the last part of my pregnancy. And if you've never had Jimmy John's ice from like their fountain section, it's amazing. And I was like, I want to get some ice. I like need that ice right now. So we walk, you know, it's like maybe 2 blocks. So we walk to Jimmy John's, and I get that ice. And as we're walking, I feel like a little bloop, like, did I pee my pants? And full disclosure, when you're pregnant, sometimes I've sneezed and peed my pants a little bit when I was pregnant, or laugh or cough, and you know, it happens. So I kind of thought like, oh, that was interesting. So we walk, and then as we're coming around, I'm like, I don't want to alarm you, Cesar, but I felt like another drip, like I either peed my pants or something's happening. And my husband is like, oh my God, are you going into labor? Should we go to the ER? And I was like, no. Like, let's not, let's not get crazy. I was like, I'm just gonna go back to work and then monitor it and I'll let you know. So to kind of back up to Wednesday, that was Thursday to Wednesday before, I was sitting in a meeting and all of a sudden I felt what I think were Braxton Hicks contractions, which are very common. Your body's like preparing for labor, but it feels just kind of like little discomfort in your stomach, and I've had that all throughout my pregnancy, just like little bits of pains here and there. And there's actually an app on your phone that you can download to like count contractions. So I started using that like in the meeting, and I noticed that they were very far apart, but then a couple were kind of close, and I'm like, that must just be a coincidence. And I've gotten really bad period cramps in the past and really bad migraines, so I feel like that my barometer for pain is very off. Like, what I think would be very painful for someone is not as painful for me because I've had like such bad pains in the past. So yeah, so I went back and I was having some of those like kind of feelings again. Then I went to the bathroom and I had some like, I don't know if this is TMI, but like some discharge that looked a little bit pinkish. And obviously you don't have your period throughout your pregnancy, so it's very like alarming. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? So I called my OB, and this was like around 1 p.m., almost 1 p.m. And I tell you, like, I was literally, I came back to the bathroom, and me and two of my coworkers were like, what do you want for lunch? I'm like looking at my phone. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna order something from Panera. I'm like making my Panera order on my phone. And I was like, you know what, girls, like something weird kind of happened to me. And I told them about the bathroom, and one of my coworkers has been pregnant. She has a baby, and she's like, oh my God, you have to call your OB right now. I'm like, really? You think it's that serious? Maybe it's just, like little discharge, I don't know. So I call my OB, and she says, yeah, go on over, because again, like where I work is like right across the street. She's like, go on over there and just like get checked out, She made it sound so casual, like I was just gonna walk over there and be like, hey guys, here's the situation, I'm good, right? So I don't place my order for Panera, so I haven't eaten since like 8 a.m. And I walk over there, and like my coworkers are so nice, they walked me over there, and I took my purse, but that is it. And I walk in there and explain the situation, and they're very calmly like, okay. And they take me in, and I didn't realize that like I was basically going into the like OB obstetrics emergency room, which that did not seem clear at the time. So they take me back to a room, have me take off all my clothes, put on a gown. They start asking me some questions, and they start hooking me up to like a contraction meter, basically, and like finding the heartbeat of the baby, and then asking me questions. And then they're like, oh, so you're gonna need to pay like your copay right now. I'm like, wow, okay, which was not cheap. So that's when I realized that this was like the OB emergency room. And I'm like, wow. At that moment, I was like, I shouldn't have come here. Should have just stayed at work. Shouldn't have done this, So they asked me a bunch of questions, and the midwife comes in, which I didn't know that like there was a midwife there, because I didn't have a doula or midwife help me in my pregnancy, just my OB. So anyway, she asked me, did your water break? And I'm like, I don't know, this situation. And she's like, she got sassy with me. She was like, did you feel a large gush of water come out of your vagina? And I was like, no. And she's like, kind of like, this girl shouldn't be here. So I started to feel that way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I come here? And I was like texting my boss and stuff the situation. She's like, keep me posted. So they say, okay, we're going to do a swab test. I guess they swab the inside of your cervix or inside of your vagina, send it off to the lab, and it tells you whether or not like your membrane, like I guess the amniotic sac has ruptured and like you're going to go into labor. The whole time they like put me in this room, they just like leave me there. And so they come and do the swab, and then they leave. And at this point they said, okay, you are having like some contractions, but I honestly, like, they were saying that the contractions were pretty strong, but I didn't really feel them. So they said, we're gonna try and stop the contractions with some IV fluids. And I'm like, I swear I'm not dehydrated, because I was drinking so much water. But anyway, they give me the IV because I'm like, well, if that'll stop the contractions. So I'm hooked up to all of these things, heart rate monitor. They did check the baby's heart rate, it was good. And they left me there for hours, 5 hours. I was just there. And I'm like a really patient person. So I'm like, okay, I didn't want to like rock the boat or anything. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here because they were waiting for the lab to test that swab, but they didn't tell me that. They just left me there. So I like called my mom and my sister and Cesar and was like, this is the situation. So after about 4 hours though, I was like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And they asked me if I'd eaten anything, which I hadn't. And I was like, I can't drink any water, nothing. So they do let me go to the bathroom. They come and like help me, and I basically take that IV thing into the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom and I'm like, any updates? Any idea what's going on? What can you tell me? And they're like, yeah, you know, we're waiting for the lab to give us the results of that swab. I'm like, okay. So I'm like watching TV, and I was practicing hypnobirthing to use as my labor method. So I'm like, I got out my hypnobirthing book called The Calm Birth Method, and I was reading it, and, you know, just trying to pass the time. And actually that night, I was supposed to go to a clothing swap with my friend Aminta. So I text her and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to go because like I'm not feeling very well. I'm like actually in the ER, and she's like, oh, okay, oh my God. So she's like, keep me posted. So they come back and they were like, yeah, this is like her demeanor. She's like, yeah, I tested positive. And I'm like, positive, like, yeah, your membrane, you're like ruptured. And I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, it means you're admitted. It means you're having a baby. It means you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, sassy pants. This is a lot of information for you to give me in such a like casual kind of way. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, no, this cannot happen now. I don't have my hospital bag packed. All I had with me was like just my work bag, and I didn't have anything with me. So I called Cesar, and he was already at work, like pulling into work. And I was like, well, tell your boss you gotta go home because we're having a baby. And he said, what? Oh my God. I'm like, yep. And I kind of went in from that moment on until I would say 3 days post-birth. I went into some sort of like mode. I don't know if it was like mother instinct, but I was just so laser focused. And not even like out of control emotional. I was just like, all right, let's do this. So I text Cesar that Google Doc. I sent him an email and was like, this is exactly everything. I need you to pick up the house. And I asked them too, like, do you think how long is gonna happen? When are they gonna move me up to a room? And they were like, I don't know. They left for several hours. So by that time, I went to the OB emergency room at like maybe 12:45. And then it wasn't until 5 that they said I had tested positive, my membrane broke, I was gonna have a baby. And so Cesar told his boss, he went back home, and there was enough time for him to do a load of laundry because I did have the newborn outfit, but it wasn't washed. So I'm like, okay, I need you to wash it, dry it on this temperature, all this stuff. He washed clothes, he picked up everything. You know, we were like texting photos. I was like, bring this makeup palette, bring this mascara. Like I wanted to have like a little bit of makeup, you know. I'm like, bring this. And since I was doing hypnobirthing, I'm like, bring these essential oils. I need you to bring these headphones because I was using like noise canceling headphones. I was just like, go, go, go. So he's like, okay, I'm on it. And he did an amazing job. He was like texting me photos like, is this it? Is this it? And he arrived at the hospital at about 8 o'clock, I would say. And whenever he came in, I stood up to give him a hug, and that's when my water broke. And I was actually on the phone with my mom, but that's when the kind of like actual, like you see in the movies, like gush of water broke. And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, like this is happening. So I was using that time to like practice my hypnobirthing and all of this. And I was like, okay, you can do this. You're going to be fine. And at this point I was having contractions. Like I could see on the screen that I was having contractions, but I did not feel pain. Like I could feel some of the contractions, but I didn't feel any strong pain. So I'm like, all right, girl, you got this. So finally at 8, I'm like, listen, they've had me in here for 7 hours, you know, by this time. I don't know when we're going up. So he goes out to the nurse's station, and they say, you know, we're just cleaning a room. I guess it was kind of busy that day. And so around 8:30, they take me up to the labor room. And on the way there, this nurse tells me, as I'm like pulling into the doors, they're wheeling me in a wheelchair into the door. She's like, you know, your life is over now. I'm like, excuse me? And I was so like in a weird focused mindset that I didn't even think about that until later. I'm like, I can't believe that a nurse said that to me. What person in their right mind would say like, bye, your life is over now? I'm like, oh my gosh. But I completely was just, like I said, so focused. So we got in the labor room. They hooked me up. Well, they already had like a port for they had to put in the port for my IV for, the time being. And this is where things went a little awry. So I was doing hypnobirthing, and when I did a tour of the hospital, I asked them, do you have one of those big exercise balls? Because I need it for my labor method. And the person giving the tour says, yes, we do. She brings it. It's a silver ball, big, like an exercise ball. I'm like, perfect. And I said, I also want to know, can I take a shower while I am laboring? And she's like, absolutely, no problem. So I go in there, I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I said, can you bring me the birthing ball? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, and her name was Susan, the person who gave me the tour. I'm like, Susan said you had it. And I was like, it's big, it's silver, it's like this. And they're like, you mean the peanut ball, which is I think a tinier ball? I'm like, no, it's big like this. And they're like, let me see. They leave for a while, and they basically are like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So they never bring that. And that was a very key part of my birth plan and the success of my planning. And I also said, and Susan told me that I could maybe get in the shower with the warm water. And they were like, no. You're hooked up to IVs. You're not going anywhere out of this bed. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I put on my noise canceling earphones, listening to my hypnobirthing affirmations and my playlist, using my essential oils. Stacer was there handing me different ones. And they said, you're not very progressed. You're still only 2 centimeters. So we need to give you Pitocin. And I'm a first-time mom, obviously, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I was really worried that means I would never progress. So I said, what's that going to do? It's going to crank up your contractions and really get this going. And I have to say that the nurses there were so nice, who were helping me. There was also some residents and doctors on there, and they were just so kind and so attentive. I felt I feel like it could have been the best experience possible, except for those few things about my birth plan. But I think if you're pregnant, your birth plan might not go completely as planned, so it's okay though. So they gave me 1 round of Pitocin, and the contractions really started. Now I could feel them. And so I was trying to kind of mimic that feeling, that motion that I would have done on the ball, kind of swaying back and forth. And it was so painful. I mean, if you've ever had just extremely painful cramps, kind of times 10, but the pain really started to crank up, and they were evaluating me, and they decided to give me a little bit more Pitocin. And that's when I started vomiting, and I hadn't eaten anything since, so now we're at 9 p.m. I hadn't eaten anything since 7:30 in the morning. So I was just vomiting stomach acid, so it was very horrible. I was in a ridiculous amount of pain, and I think the vomiting and the nausea was really what set me off, because it was just uncontrollable. And that's gross, I know, but it was just horrible. So in all of this, around 10 p.m., they said, I think they had asked me before, you doing the epidural? And I said, nope, I am not. I'm doing hypnobirthing. I'm good. And they said, okay, we respect that. And around 10 p.m., they said, there are pain management options available. And they said epidural. And then also they can give you an IV of, I can't remember the name of the drug, but it's a mild painkiller. So it takes some of the edge off of the contractions. And I said, actually, I don't want to do the epidural. I want to do that option. So the nurse goes to prepare the IV, and they come back in and say, hey, we saw in your chart that you're allergic to codeine. We can't do that IV, painkiller because it's a codeine derivative. And I was like, oh my gosh. Actually, I was more but I didn't say that. So I said, let me think about it. And she left. I was still in pain, and I told Cesar, go get her. I decided to do the epidural, after about, that was So she told me that about like 10. And so close to 1 a.m., I was like, all right, like, let's do the epidural. And I've gone through a lot of emotions about that. And I've gotten a lot of negative criticism about that. You know, people saying like, oh, you know, so you weren't tough enough to like, you know, that you had to get the epidural. And I just think that type of birth shaming is so crazy. You know, whatever your birth plan is, I totally support anyone's birth plan, whether you want to do epidural or not or whatnot. But in that moment, and especially if you're pregnant and watching that, just watching this, listen to your body, because your body is going to tell you. And I'm so glad that I did in that moment, because I just knew I was in a senseless amount of pain, vomiting, and it was really making this experience super negative, this like beautiful experience. And my OB said something to me. She was like, no one leaves the labor, no one leaves your delivery with a trophy for not getting an epidural. And I was like, you know what? It's my own pride that is keeping me from this, and I'm causing myself a lot of like senseless pain and suffering. So I told them, okay, I would like to do the epidural. So they bring in the anesthesiologist, and I tell you, if there is one feeling, not pain, but feeling I'll never forget for the rest of my life, it's when they put in the epidural, because it is like lightning into your spinal cord. Even the pain of contractions I remember, but just I can every now and then I can just like imagine it again. And I tell you, and you have to be super still. It is crazy. But I tell you, the minute they put that in, it starts working. 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend. That is some good stuff. I went from being super panicky, anxious, you know, having this very like horrible like vomiting and stuff, to feeling positive. I was like actually more centered in the moment. So for me, that was a great choice. I felt like, oh my gosh, you know, I started to feel more in tune with myself again. And also, if you're worried about getting an epidural, you can tell them, like they'll give you just a small dose. So some people have said, well, I'll go numb. I never went numb, ever. So they gave me a small dose, and I think it was just enough to like stop my vomiting, because I think the vomiting was literally from the pain. Could also be from like the Pitocin and stuff, and on an empty stomach and all of that. But I always felt everything, but just like the pain was taken down. So yeah, I highly recommend. So that was like 1 a.m. And so they're kind of flipping me over, because they explained it to me that once your water breaks, you know, the kind of bouncy, watery kind of waterbed environment that's inside the uterus is now, you know, less watery. So the baby can sit on the umbilical cord. So they have to like keep moving you. So that Pitocin, they were able to kick up a notch and really help open up my cervix. And believe it or not, I was able to sleep, because I was getting sleepy after like 9 or almost 10 or 11 hours of this whole journey so far. So I slept a little bit, and they kept coming in to check me and turn me. Slept a little bit more, and then around 7 a.m. They checked and they said, okay, you're 9 centimeters, so like I think we're good to get ready for delivery. And I was so happy that I made it that far, because actually my OB was not like working. I don't know, she was doing like working somewhere else, and so she came in at 7:30. So I was glad that my actual OB was able to deliver. And when I saw her, she's just such a positive person, and she was so amazing. She was like, you're doing great, like let's do this. And yeah, I just love her. I was like, all right. And so around 7:30 I started pushing. No, I would say like 7 or ish, you know, I started pushing, and she had me in all these great positions, and she was just like, yeah, so what you guys gonna do later? Like just kind of keeping my mind off of it, and super casual. And she was just, you know, talking, and my husband was there holding my legs, and I was like pushing, and she was so great at like helping move the baby down the birth canal, just like little by little. And I did like some different positions, like on all fours. And since by that time I let the epidural wear off, because I was like, all right, you know, obviously I'm not going to renew it. We're so close into this. And so, yeah, so obviously I was feeling things, but I feel like I was just like on a adrenaline high. And yeah, so I pushed for about 3.5 hours, I would say. And then finally, she was telling me like, okay, you know, when the head was there, and like, kudos to my husband. He was looking at it all. Like, he didn't care. He was there. And it's funny because she was like, what color is your hair naturally? I'm like, oh, kind of like a mousy brown. You know, I like darken it to make it look more vibrant. And obviously my husband is Hispanic with black hair. And she's like, because this baby has like blonde hair. And we looked at each other like, how? That's so impossible. And so as he was coming out, all of a sudden they looked and they were like, oh crap, we got to get him out now, because I guess they saw a drop in his heart rate. So they had to use the like vacuum thing, which is actually like a suction, you know, thing. And so they do that. And up until that point, I was like, all right, I can do this. But the last 2 pushes, I was like, you got to get him out now. Because I could feel like, imagine feeling a human like half in and half out of you. I was like, you got to get him out now. You have to get him out now. And she's like, we're working. We're going to do it. And it was kind of like a 1, 2, 3. And he was out. And I tell you, there is almost no better feeling in the world than like that amount of relief, especially because Luca was like all up in my rib cage, and I have a very short torso. I'm a petite person, so I just always felt this like crazy pressure in my ribs. So to feel that immediate like relief of him coming out, I tell you, it was just amazing. And I was just almost like in shock, and I look over and my husband was like crying, like, and they took him and got him cleaned up a little bit. He did have like a little bit of a cone head because of the vacuum, but they had to get him out. That was, you know, their only choice. And then when they gave him to me, I was just like, it's just like almost in shock and just a wave of like emotions. It was so crazy, but and to see him, and you know, it was amazing. And just to see everyone there around and how happy they were for me. And I like made a joke. I was like 10 fingers, 10 toes. And they were like, ha ha ha, yes, you know, he's got 10 fingers, 10 toes. And yeah, it was just the most amazing thing. And I feel like emotional talking about it now because it's just crazy. Like, I never thought I would feel that way. You know, people always tell you like, you'll never experience that type of love. But when you look into, especially like, you know, you are growing this person for 9 months and then you finally meet them, you're like, oh my gosh. And especially after things not really going as I had planned for my, you know, initial labor, it just felt like such a relief, you know, and all of that just went out of the window. I did have a tear. My OB actually had to cut me down there, like snip once, you know, so it wasn't a really big deal. And she was so amazing. I didn't even notice it. I think they gave me like a lidocaine, or gave me like a shot before they did it, like down there. But honestly, you have so much adrenaline that's like, you're not even paying attention. My OBGYN is so amazing. Like, if you're in the Miami area and you're looking for someone, let me know, because I highly recommend her. She's the most amazing person. I wish I could give her gifts, but you can't. So at 10:23 a.m. on October 18th, 2019, Luca Frederick came into our lives almost a month early, like 3.5 weeks early. He came at 36 weeks, and it's just been such a blessing, even though we definitely thought we had a few more weeks, you know. Everyone told me that I would go over my due date. They were like, even the ultrasounds leading up to that, they were saying, you know, you're a first-time mom, so it's very likely you'll go over. And we already had a plan in place on if I did go over. My parents were coming into town November 10th through the 24th, I think it was. And I was saying like, oh, we have to make sure that he comes in between that time because my parents are going to be here. So my OB was like, okay, we'll induce you, you know, at this time. If he doesn't come so many days, you know, she said, I don't even let my patients go more than 5 or 7 days over their due date just because of some health risks that she believes. So yeah, I was all prepared for him to come late, and he surprised us all and decided to come very early. Luckily, he was weighing 7 pounds and 20.5 inches, so he was a very healthy weight and height, definitely not underdeveloped or anything. It was interesting is that his like nails were not, like, he didn't have any eyebrows, and like his nails were not all the way there. So I don't know if that's common or if that's something that happens in babies who are born a little bit early. But yeah, he definitely surprised us with that one, but it was a blessing. So that is our birth story up into what happened in birth. It gets a lot more dramatic, unfortunately, from there, at least for us, in my eyes, got a lot more dramatic. So if you want to see or hear the part 2 of his kind of first days of life, then let me know. I don't want to take up too much of your time because this video is already really long. It felt really good to share that birth story with you though, so I hope you enjoyed this. And if you are pregnant or you're thinking about becoming pregnant and you have any questions about like my pregnancy experience or more questions about like that birth experience, just let me know down in the comments. I hope you guys are all staying safe and well inside, and I will have more videos coming up very soon so that we can all connect here while we're all stuck at home. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.